So, hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Dude, Where's My Ramp? This is the first episode in this podcast series that myself and Emma will be doing, and it's going to be looking at different aspects of disability and hopefully highlighting some of the issues that we as disabled people face and how people can be disability allies, but also talking about topical issues that might be affecting others, recent news, and such issues. I'm Chandy, and I'm a disability advocate from the UK. I'm a white male. I have a ginger beard and short brown hair. In this episode, I'm wearing a green a green top, and you can't see, but black tracksuit bottoms. Emma?
My name is Emma, and I am a white woman in my early 30s, and I have long, wavy brown hair, and I have glasses, and I'm wearing a mint green dress and a black cardigan sweater, and I'm seated in my background is blurred, but I'm seated in my bedroom, and I know it's an ugly background, but I don't really care. Like, it's real, so whatever. I am in Brooklyn, New York, in the United States. I'm a disability studies student at CUNY here in New York, and I'm a disability advocate, and I have been disabled my whole life. I was born with a rare form of muscular dystrophy. I also, I don't even think I told you this. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, but it turns out I actually have the ADHD, which is like the autism and ADHD together, which is like literally within the last month. So that's new. I guess that's about it.
Amazing. And so, with each of these episodes, we're going to be talking about different issues that are current to today's climate and also looking at issues that other disabled people are facing. We'll have guests on at various points in the series, and also we'll be sharing our own different experiences. We're going to start each episode with a ramp check. This is us checking in to make sure that we're both okay and talk about issues and news topics. So, Emma, how's your week been?
It's been good. I've been just finishing up finals, so a lot of less sleep than usual, but still good. I mean, it's been going all right. And then, okay, no, it's been really stressful. No, I'm like faking it. No, it's been really stressful. But that's okay. I think that's good to be honest, and that's okay to be stressed out.
And how have you dealt with that stress? What have you done for yourself?
I have been this I've been getting a lot of delivery food, to be honest. A lot of pizza.
Love
And in
that.
New York, the pizza is really good. So, getting a lot of pizza, and I've been talking to friends and being patient with myself and giving myself space to feel my feelings um and to yeah and to giving myself the patience not to have it all together, to be okay. I think
Love
that's
that.
okay.
Love that. I know what you mean. I think giving yourself time for patience is so important. Like, I've been so frustrated with myself this week, like, because I've been made unemployed, and so trying to find work as a freelancer is so like stressful as an experience. And given how hard it is to get a job at the moment anyway, but adding the pressure of being disabled is so like triggering and so emotionally draining.
So now that we've checked in and done our ramp check, we're going to be talking about a couple different things today. Really, this first episode is just about sort of feeling the waters, and so that you listeners can get a taste of our personalities and how we communicate, and how we talk about disability. And we're kind of just winging it. So we'll just kind of get right to it. So, one thing we do is just kind of chat away. So you get the pleasure of listening to that for this first round. Just before we started recording, I started telling you about this amazing book that I have been reading over and over again, and it's called All Our Families: Disability, Lineage, and the Future of Kinship. The author, Jennifer Natalia Fink, is the director of the program in disability studies and a professor of English at Georgetown University, where my parents attended. So, Hoya Saxa. But I thought the book was amazing. And it talks about how we come from disabled people, all of us, but that disability lineage exists, but it's been erased. And, societal ableism starts in the family. And how the way we erase disability from our family narratives is responsible for the response that disability gets when it inevitably shows up in a family, and how that impacts it has a ripple effect on disabled people and on the world in general. And I thought it was an incredible book. It as I was reading it, I felt like all of the dots were connected to my life experience. And I started to sort of recognize how it's impacted things like care, healthcare, work, employment, and how we build the world. So, accessibility, everything. And it starts and how, yeah, and it impacts the way we think about each other and about our families and how we navigate our own families. I think one of the things that I really liked in the book, what sort of had me, what kind of gripped my attention, was talking about how, when the author talks about how, disability is seen as a surprise, it's sort of like when it shows up in the family, it's seen as because when people start to plan their families, they assume that they're going to have a certain child. Even if you think you have no expectations about your children, a lot of people do. And I think nobody prepares for disability because nobody thinks it really happens.
I think that's so true. And I think just even looking at my own experiences, like when I was growing up, I would always question my mum, like not all the time, but like every now and then I'd just feel like when someone would say something at school or like a teacher would make a comment or something, I'd ask my mum like if she knew that I was going to become disabled, because I acquired my disability 3 years into like life when I was 3 years old. That was a really weird way of saying I was 3 years old at the time, but like I wasn't born with my disability, is what I'm trying to say. And so I would say, like, would she have still had me? Would she wanted me to be a disabled person and grow up in this world? And that's quite a deep conversation for like a 5 or 6 year old, or even like a child to be having with their parent. And obviously, she said she wouldn't change anything. But like, it is like that thing of like the expectation of what it means to be human, and disabled people make up so much of society. Like, it's not even like it's a small proportion, and it's such an intersectional thing. Like, you could be a man, a woman, you can be trans, you can be non-binary, you can be of a different race, religion, sexuality, and still be disabled.
It exists in all communities, all groups of people. It is literally, I would say, the one thing that connects us all as a species, as living, is disability. I mean, it's sort of like there's there's that, and just being human. I think that's really, when I was thinking about that, I thought that was like the coolest thing.
And I mean, I wouldn't change being disabled for anything now. Like, I love the fact that I'm who I am, and my disability is part of that. It's not everything about me, but like, you can become disabled at any point in your life. And I think that's what makes it so like hard to deal with as well, because we are taught what it means to be disabled from the education system, from the media, from all these structures that are seen to make it an individual battle that you have to go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's, well, first I want to point out 20% of people are disabled, identify as disabled, or have an identified disability. Now, even that 20%, that number is probably way lower, because there's a lot of people who are not identifying or have not been diagnosed, or it's hidden, or they have a disability that's not yet recognized as a disability. So 20% of people, that seems like it's low. I think that's sort of off-putting. It's actually very high. That's a lot of people within that 20% of all people on the globe. That's a lot. That's probably millions of people. Billions. No, it's billions, because I know it's billions. I also have dyscalculia, so numbers they just don't. But yeah, I think I wouldn't change my disability either, because well, first of all, it's like, that'd be really boring. Oh my gosh, I would be so boring. I like the worldview it's given me. I believe that it contributes to how creative I am, how adaptive I am, how well I problem solve, how I communicate. I think it positively impacts so many things in my life that without disability, I would be really struggling. And I think about, like, what's happening in my own family is my mom was diagnosed with ALS back in October, and I feel so equipped for that. Where the rest of my family is really, I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm like, it's like easy breezy, beautiful cover girl, but I but I think it's been a lot easier to adapt. And I feel that the things that other people are struggling with are just not where I'm struggling. And I would be just in a lot more pain if I hadn't had my disabled life.
And I think the thing about disability is that it is historical. Like, throughout history, there's been different shifts and different understandings of what it means to be disabled. And I think we're going through another shift at the moment, because like we see like obviously within America, like the comments that were made by your equivalent of your health secretary, like around like autism and it being thing like down to certain aspects of life, and like you can
RFK Jr. That
yeah. And I think those kind of comments around like the way that disability is like experienced, and also how you gain a disability, but also like historically, like in the UK, like over 100 years ago, we had legislation that's called disabled people feeble-minded and idiots and kind of lesser than, and that was law that was passed by elected officials at the time. And that isn't the case now. Like, we have like the Equality Act and stuff that says that disabled people can't be discriminated against, and that is really helpful, but it still happens, whether that be indirectly or directly. And I think that's because of those shifts culturally and structurally to oppress disabled people and to make it about them being the problem. That medical model of, you're an issue, you need to sort yourself out.
Well, and there's also like, and this is what the book sort of talks about, is there's always that line with people, is they say, oh, disabled people are equal, and we have all these laws, like in the United States, the Americans with Disabilities Act is, I think, the most detailed like laws that exist globally. But it's messy. There's a lot of holes in it, and that goes into, there's that was on purpose. That wasn't an accident. There's always a line with people with, there's a sorting that occurs. And it talks about that, and this is rooted in fascism. The sorting of who is, tolerable, who is not, and who needs to get out. And I, for example, I know that a lot of the reason I have been able to navigate this world with ease, with easier than other disabled people, is simply because I have one of the more digestible, tolerable disabilities. It doesn't force people to really transform. And what I'm seeing with my mom is she does not. She does not have one of those tolerable disabilities. And so what's happening, the way she's being treated is, she's it's very clear in the way she's being treated. It's really due to people's resistance to not wanting to do what they need to do to include her as a disabled woman. And it's very clear to me, and it's very upsetting to see. And I know the difference. And I think that's needs to be talked about more is, as much inclusion is going on, there's always that line, and it's this elephant in the room nobody wants to talk about. I think of all the people that get left behind when we're doing activism or when we're talking about inclusion.
And I think there's so much that we can say on this topic. It's such a big issue, but I think for me it comes down to acceptance, because it's not just the acceptance that you as a disabled person go through to understand yourself. Even I've had my disability, I'll be 30 end of May, and I've had it for 27 years. I don't know what it means to be non-disabled anymore. I only know disability, and I've had different shifts in my own acceptance of that, and I've acquired new illness and new disabilities I've gotten. And I think you as a disabled person have to accept that and go through that, but also other people do as well. And I think that is hard. I understand the people around me have had to adjust and have had to understand things, as well as when I've been teaching them about my disability and what I need and the help I need. Because I think people do want to offer help and do want to be that support. I know before we started recording, you spoke about someone holding the door open for you, and that as a wheelchair user, is it okay to open the door for someone and things like that? But I think that comes down to how they're taught about disability and how they see disabled people, and that sort of fear of doing the wrong thing. But at the same time, I acknowledge that you still need to see the person. One of my favorite films is Patch Adams, with Robin Williams.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
And there's a bit in it when they're doing the ward rounds, and the consultant doctor's introducing a patient and talking about their diabetes and how their foot's swollen and stuff.
I know this part. Yeah.
And he goes do any of the junior doctors have any questions? And 3 or 4 doctors ask really medical questions, and then Patch goes, "What's the patient's name?" And they all seem stunned, "What are you on about?" And he asks the patient, "What's your name?" She says her name to him. But that was such a different perspective on it. While they're all seeing these issues and the problems, if you just see the person and you treat them as an individual with needs, basic human needs, and also needs and wants and stuff that they need to experience life, and they have their own ambitions and goals. I think as soon as you see, oh, this person's disabled, they think they have no desires, they have no ambition anymore, when actually they do.
I think that's almost a little more intentional. I think people, not in a malicious way, but people sort of make the choice to sort of medicalize and to, make a, in that scene, they're making the disabled person or the I don't know what the character, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I know exactly what scene you're talking about. I don't know if that individual was like sick or it was a hospital, so you don't know. But like, but you know, it's to make them into the subject, to the studied, the something, to an object, essentially. It's objectifying. I but I think there's there's a little bit of intention there, because there's a resistance to like needing to, when disability comes into the picture, you have to transform, you have to change. You do. And that's the individual themselves who's disabled. Like, you know, you're forced to transform, to change, and the people around you are forced to transform and change. And when you don't, and you know, I think the resistance to that is not, like I said, not calculated. I don't think anybody gets up in the morning and they're like, oh, I'm gonna, like, you know, not do this on purpose. I think there's somewhat of a consciousness there, and it's resistance to, because again, I think people, you know, it because the world is the way it is, it takes effort. And, you know, I think people, it's very human to want to do the easy thing. That's very human, but, you know, is it the right thing when it comes to disability? No. I mean, if you're going to use a calculator on a math test, is that taking the easy way? Yes. Is that wrong? No. You know, but when it comes to disability, it is. And I think why people get really defensive is because they know that.
And I also think that the thing about disability is it's not a one size fits all approach. Like, you're not just disabled and you all have the same impairments and same limitations and things you can't do and things you can do.
Well, I think that's with any sort of human identity. Like, are all, you know, is it one size fits all for everybody who is female? No. Is it, you know, anybody who is, you know, from the UK? No. It's a very diverse, as small as it is, there's so much diversity in that country. And is it, you know, whatever kind of human identity you're talking about, it's never one size fits all. And so I think we constantly, in general, are trying to fit people into boxes because it's easier. It's easier because then you don't have to do the work. And I think human relationships, yeah, they're not easy. And you do have to, like, you have to ask questions, you have to adapt. But I think, you know, thinking is hard, and communicating is hard, and interacting with people is hard. And I think it really just comes down to that. I think people want to do what's easiest, which, again, very human, but it's wrong in this sense when you're dealing with other people.
Don't get me wrong, it does take effort to consciously think, how are my actions, how are my words going to impact this person? And me as a disabled person, I don't often get it right. I don't get it right all the time. Like, I think that's just something you have to accept, that you, like, what might work for some of my disabled friends wouldn't work for others, and that, like, you have to learn about the individual. And I think it is about being empathetic to what that person needs, and understanding that, like, just like you, that they have ambition, they have goals, as I've said, but also, like, they experience life just as you do.
I think what it comes down to, what you know, I think disability challenges, I think, where there's a lot of resistance, because it challenges what people have built up, this belief system of what it means to be human, what it means to be alive. It challenges these these embedded beliefs of our culture. And, you know, challenging that, when people are faced with that, then they're also faced with, what does that mean for me as a person? And I think that scares people. I think people get really afraid. Like, again, I have, in my own, in other relationships I've had in my life, when I have challenged that, I see the resistance really comes from, they're afraid of what that means for them as a human. Does that mean I'm a bad person? Does that mean that what I believe is wrong? And that's a very scary place to be for a lot of people. I mean, I know I'm a big believer in, it takes one to know one. So I'm saying that because I've experienced that as well, not because I'm like superior. It's because I've been there too. When I, as a white person, it was in more recent years that it came to my attention that me, just not using certain words and not hating people of color, like that didn't mean I wasn't racist. It's a lot more than that. And I started to educate myself, and it was really, I'm still doing that, and it's so uncomfortable because I'm reflecting, and I like to think myself that I'm a good person, and it puts me in a space where I'm like reflecting and on my own actions and being like, ooh, uh-oh. And it's really uncomfortable. It's not good. But how I've made peace with that is I say, all right, well, I'm human. And yeah, have I been a good person all the time? No, because I'm human. I've been a bad person a lot. But I want to, the important thing is I don't want to be a bad person. So I'm doing what I need to do now.
And the thing about disability is that it it kind of reframes and like gives a perspective on things like who gets to be seen as like quote unquote normal, like the norm, like how do you experience life in a normal way? And I think I got caught up on this so much as a kid. Like I just want to be normal. I want to be like my friends. I want to be like them, and that detracted away from my experience of life, and also like meant that I didn't fully engage in things because I didn't want to make myself be embarrassed by my actions, or like if it was like a race or sports day, like I would I remember there was one time it was like sports day and I entered the skipping race and I couldn't skip. So I got my TA to help me learn to skip, and like I'm there practicing, and like my left arm is doing nothing and my right arm's doing all the work.
Yeah.
And I looked, like you look at it and you think, wow, like just don't even like bother. But and I came last in the race, but like I only did that because of I pushed myself to go beyond my own like self-limiting beliefs and my own internalized ableism. But I think like as a society, I don't know what it's like in America, but like we have a habit of like pushing these ideas of this is the standard of normalcy that you have to meet. Like you have to be this amount of pretty or this amount of something to fit in and to be accepted.
Well, yeah, I think that exists in most cultures. There's a baseline. But I do like, what's interesting is the word normal itself. Um, there's, I think everybody's got their baseline. I mean, well, what's interesting is I have a progressive disability, so it changes. Muscular dystrophy. So that I've never had a baseline. That's why I've always sort of been able to challenge myself with the idea of normal, because every time I get used to my body, like, and like, okay, I know how this works, then it changes. That line is always moving. And
Mm.
that's actually true for everybody because we're never really the same. We're always changing. Our when are we ever, I mean, it may seem like that because the changes happen over time with a lot of people, and it's very like, when you look at a picture of you when you're a baby, you're kind of like, whoa, is that me? Like, it's we don't notice it when it's happening. For me, I do, because my body changes very quickly. And so, but that word normal in medicine, it describes like statistical averages or expected patterns in biological function. But it sets an arbitrary benchmark based on non-disabled, neurotypical, often white male bodies in medical research. And it constructs normal as desirable and abnormal as defective. And so when you bring ableism into this, so it marginalizes anyone outside of that statistical norm, and it frames disability as a deviation rather than part of natural human diversity, and reinforces the exclusion of like, if you're not normal, you're pathologized. And I that sort of relationship with normal is what's been brought into our everyday, into our societal belief system.
And I think like just in terms of like us doing this podcast, like we both acknowledge that like we both have to look at our notes to remember things and things like that, and we've made up adaptations to help each other communicate and make this as accessible as possible, both of us. But I think, and that's become our normal, like how we as friends communicate and how we like plan episodes and how we like talk to each other. But I think in terms of like society, like I remember like in university there was only a few disabled people, like I think, or like visibly disabled, or like people who felt comfortable enough to talk about their disability, because it is hard to know what's going to happen when you do declare that you have a disability, because people can judge you, people can make quick decisions, and then you live with that for a long time, especially if you're in a classroom with those people.
It's not safe. Yeah, it's not safe.
And I think that idea of the institutions, like those educational bodies, if they set a standard of normalcy that's like people are going to be disabled, people can get the support if they need it, and not making it a taboo, not making it like like you need special help to do this, like the language, even like for me, like personally, like I don't like the term special needs or like things like that.
Yeah, because they're just
Because
needs.
it's just how you operate and how a disabled person needs to get through the day or get through the activity. Um,
Like,
and
you know what a special need is? Mariah Carey, the singer, hiring an assistant just to throw out her gum. That's a special need. Okay. Being disabled and needing care, needing a certain, tool or mobility aid, or needing a certain way of communication, that's just a need. That's not, it's, that's normal.
I
Or
think,
like, I'm using that word again, like I'm trying to challenge myself, like what is that?
and I think it's okay to say that that's our experiences and how we, and there are people who do prefer using the term special educational needs and things like that, like especially around SEN, like that. But that's also the language that's been used over years. Like it's been like, even when I was at school, it was special educational needs, and like now we're learning about like our language is always evolving, is what I'm trying to say. And like even around like how we define autism and like high functioning, low functioning, it's not how society believed it was. It's more entangled and more holistic on the like behind the scenes, and that's what we need to try and that's how our language needs to evolve to
Well, also, and I'll say this about, so special education, special needs, think about it compared to, why don't we say that when we're talking about, somebody like who's operating at a genius level? Why aren't they in a special education? They call it something else, gifted, right? So I think what needs to be pointed out is when they're saying, when the term special, when it's linked to disability, it's a negative disguised as a positive. Because the term special, it's a positive word. Special is a great word. Special occasions, special, dessert, I don't know, special, a TV special, like it's positive. But when you link it with disability, that's not what they mean. They mean less than. They say the same thing for people who need more advanced courses in school, or need, when it's linked with non-disabled differences, that's not the word that's used.
And I think that also comes down to that, I keep going back to it, like that historical view of disability. And there was a time when, like, disabled people were seen as they've done something wrong in a previous life, and that's why they're disabled, or like their family has done something to end up with a disabled child, or things like that. And also, like, then we shifted to like it becoming a community response, like to look after a disabled person, and it was everyone's responsibility to help that disabled person. And it feels like, especially now, like especially around like organizations and the shift away from wanting to not be woke or be seen as woke, because they think it's a bad thing, when actually if you are woke and you are aware of these issues and you adapt to disabled people, you're actually catering to non-disabled people as well, because accessible design and infrastructure and attitudes help all of us.
Yeah, I live in New York, so I'm, where there's, I'm in Brooklyn, but right across the river is Manhattan, where there's lots of skyscrapers. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure all of you are thankful for the elevators. Or, curb cuts. I think about people, all the, you see delivery people bringing in like huge, like things, like boxes, like you need those curb cuts too. Strollers, or just anybody, also in New York, people are like, because a lot of people they're not using cars. They're like self mobilized. I don't know. They're whatever, however you transport yourself, whether it be wheelchair, legs, or whatever. People are doing it themselves, not in a car. And so they drag their groceries in like a cart or a wagon or something. And you need those curb cuts too. Like, you're welcome.
And I'm not being funny, like it took me a long time to kind of use some of the appliances that I do now use. Like I have a seat in the shower, because standing on the wet floor I can slip and I feel I'm off balance. The luxury and the joy of having a sit down shower, it's like so amazing. Just being able to sit there and go, yeah, cool, I can sit here for 5 minutes, have a shower, and then
Yeah.
take my time and not feel like I'm going to trip over and end up knocking myself out, like I've almost done several times and things like that.
Yeah. Well, and luxury bathroom architecture usually includes, like, I used to watch a lot of like MTV Cribs. I don't know if do they have it
Oh,
out
that
there?
brings back memories.
Yeah. So like all these like McMansions and these celebrity homes, a lot of them had like these, these like, for like 5 people, like showers. Like, I don't know if 5 people went in them, but it was like, they called them that because it was like, that's the size they were.
Mm.
Um, but they always had like a seat built in. I'm like, so why is it different then? It's seen as a luxury for somebody who has a huge house to have some sort of seat in their like bathing area, shower, bathtub, but it's gets weird when a disabled person, or even uh all these other things, like having somebody drive you when you're really wealthy. Having somebody drive you is like, that's cool. But if you're disabled and you're having somebody drive you somewhere, it's like it's a taboo. People get really weirded out. Or having somebody come clean your house when you are wealthy, that's cool. Oh, you have somebody clean your house? Oh, well, that's good for you. But me having somebody come and help clean my house, like that's, oh, that's nice that you have that. Like, yeah, it's nice. I hate cleaning.
And it's the attitudes as well towards the things that make us and help us to be independent. Like there's a news outlet in the UK that's very right wing, and they have a host who like basically gets off saying all these things around like they go around saying these things like, oh, if you have ADHD, you're entitled to a free car. And
Really? Is that true?
like
Because that'd be nice.
exactly, but the reality is like it's hard to get disability benefit, and they're looking at just changing the system and stuff. But you have to meet like a minimum point score in two different components. One's daily living, one's mobility, and you have to score extremely high in the mobility to get the funding to pay for a mobility car. So you're using your own benefits to pay for your car, basically. But for them, they see that as, oh, they're getting a free car and all
Oh,
this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but if they didn't have that car that's accessible to them and had space for their wheelchair and allowed them to like get into the car and drive it themselves, like they wouldn't be able to get a job. They wouldn't be able to access the world around them. They'd be locked at home in a place that might not be accessible to their needs fully yet, and things like that. And that they keep banging on about how more disabled people need to get into work here in the UK, and that's not going to happen if you remove those things that liberate them and help them get into work.
yeah. We don't get anything. Well, here in the United States, you can get, if you need an accessible car, how you get it is you have to usually go through what's called vocational rehab, and they will help you access a car, but they will not help you if you live in a city, because they say you can take paratransit or public transportation. Like I've always lived in cities, so I have never been able to access that at all. And uh, even so, you still have to pay for the car. They help pay for maybe the driving lessons if you're getting your license, or if you're not going to drive yourself, maybe it's just somebody else will drive it for you. Then they're paying for like the conversion package. But like, yeah, it's not getting a free car. And a accessible minivan is like a Dodge minivan. That's not like a fancy car. It's a freaking minivan. And they're like this, they cost the same as like a BMW or like a
And
Mercedes. Like it's so bad.
and once that money in the UK is taken away from their disability benefit, they don't get a top up to help them. They then either have to go and like find work part time, or like borrow money, or if they're on like if they're not able to work, then other benefits. But like it's the assumption that people make around, oh well, you get a free all this stuff for free when you're disabled, when it's harder than it needs to be. Like I have a degree and I was unable to get my degree because of adaptations and support, and like things like really loud technology on my laptop, or like me speaking into my microphone and it would like write out what I was saying.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have got a degree otherwise, and like they've used that to stop me from getting higher levels of support under disability benefit, like like under the system. And it's those sort of things that like aren't talked about enough, because it doesn't help the narrative. It doesn't help what they're trying to convey around us being, for want of a better word, a burden on them and a burden on society.
Well, and that speaks to, I mean, that's systemic oppression right there. Everything is working exactly as it was intended to. I think the people who created these systems, created these programs, they were intelligent people. They were, and I think it's everything that has been built, everything that we're living under, was meant to, both of us live in countries where that were created to benefit a very specific group of people. I think, well, at least maybe I might be speaking with a little bit of ignorance with the UK. I'm not as educated with how things work there, but I know a little bit. But in the United States, I can definitely speak to that this was intentional. And this is why I think with activism, I don't think anything's really going to change unless, in the United States, the only time a civil rights, movement has been successful or a marginalized group has been able to move forward is not by, getting people to care. It's by not giving the people in power a choice. It's putting into threat the things that are most important, which are power and money.
And I think that's what you say there around money is the big thing. Like, when our current government were in opposition, there was a lot of language around you can't cut benefits for disabled people. It's going to cause a lot of things. And now you see them, well, now they've been elected, the whole language has shifted into, oh no, but if we put money into disabled people's benefits, it's going to cost us money. So therefore we need to cut it and we need to make it harder for it to be accessible. And it's just moving the goalpost further away from us being able to access that funding. Whereas if you actually made it easier and you helped disabled people to get these benefits, that is in the title, it's like it's independent payments, like their personal independence payments for a reason. It helps disabled people to be independent, and without that independence, they're not able to work, they're not able to socialize or engage with the world around them.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they see it as, oh, but it's saving us a bit of money, but it will probably end up costing them money by not providing that support.
Right, which I don't think that's where the thinking sort of falls short with I think people in power is, I'm like, without us, everything would crumble. Like, that, right? Like, in the United States, I'm like, people say disabled people are a burden. I'm like, no, uh, everything would crumble if we weren't here. Like, for sure. Like, by just existing, I create jobs for others. I have helped move technology forward. Look, if all of us disappeared tomorrow, all of us disabled people, we just poof gone. What would happen? Think of what would happen. Like, how many people would be out of work? Just the world would stop. The world would literally, like, just, that would be the end of it. And if we take it a little less extreme, if we stop getting the things that we need, it would have the same effect.
And I think what you say is, like, around, like, disabled people existing helps with innovation, because people design things to be more accessible, things like Siri and voice technology, or like read aloud and things like that. And I always use the example of captions, like on video or like on movies and stuff. Like, you might have them on before. Like, I used to find them really annoying as a kid, but now I'm like, if I don't have the captions, I'm like, I might miss something that's being said, or I might get distracted and then go back and I've lost my train of thought and getting all muddled and confused. But those things serve a purpose for disabled people, but also they help make life a lot easier for other people as well.
Well, they also come from disabled people. So those, like, touch screens, autocorrect, predictive text, those advanced through accessibility tools developed for people with this, for disabled people. like Siri, Alexa, directly descended from tech developed for the blind, low vision, and mobility disabled.
Mm.
Technology wouldn't be a word. Like this iPhone right here, like that's thanks to disabled people, like the way it operates, not Steve Jobs. I mean, he had a part to play in it. I'll give him some credit, a little bit. But it's, all of these, all of these things that we rely on, that we use every day, but we've been erased. And that's the thing. And if we're not here, like, where do you think and notice too how there's been this like just surge in technology advancement within our lifetime. I can't help but think, now I'll have to do some more like research on this. Like, this is something that just literally popped into my head, but I'm like, there's probably a connection with the, as disabled people have become more included in the world, that's when technology started to advance really quickly. I feel like there's a connection there.
And I also think that the problem with like what you were saying, like disability isn't seen as sexy. It's seen as very clinical and a very like one. There's one way of when people tell you the word disability, everyone, even disabled people, have an idea of what that means on paper or what it means in films and what it means on like TV shows and things. And that's often not a very sexy like identity. It's not a very like, it's very clinical, when in reality disability is so beautiful, it's so entangled, it's so like it's just an amazing like way of looking at the world and being. And I think like if we just highlighted that more, whether through representation, which we'll probably talk about in other episodes, or things like that, like you'd actually, it would make all of what we talked about really accessible, and it would make it easier to come to terms with. It'd still be challenging to deal with disability and learning about your own disability and seeing other people around you become disabled in your immediate family or friends, but it would make it a little bit less harsh. It would make it easier and more digestible, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Something I want to add on to your point is that in my life, I have felt a lot of times that the negative response I'm getting or that I'm seeing with disability is underneath that. I feel like people are intimidated. Like a lot, like not always, but I feel like there's sort of like, I don't know, I felt like that at work. Like I have showcased, certain gifts and talents that I have, or, things that I'm good at, strengths. And I think, and that are directly, things that are strengthened by my disability or are directly connected to, I have them because I'm disabled. And I feel like maybe this is just me having like a big ego. I could be like being such a snob right now, but I feel like that intimidates people. I feel like people get sort of, and it's usually like people who are pretty like vanilla, I guess, is like, I don't like, kind of bland, like, they might be a more, I don't know, it's like the mediocre privileged person who gets like kind of like antsy. I don't know. They get kind of into, I feel like it's a little bit because, yeah, it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of things that are so beautiful about disability. It's such a, I feel like when you talk about survival of the fittest, everybody's so sure that it means like you have the most muscle mass and, you have the highest IQ. I'm like, no, because evolution and the species that have survived have to do with adaptability. And like, guess who's the best at adapting? Us. I don't know. Like, I feel like we're the fittest. A little bit.
I think if disability definitely gives you it helps you to be more innovative and more like think on your feet a lot more. Like I'm a very slow thinker, but sometimes like because of my disability, I'll see a problem and I'll be like, oh, but maybe if we did it this way, that might, like, if I did it this way and I adapted, and it makes it easier for me to do things.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be perfect at everything. I acknowledge that, and I'm not going to say I'm ever going to be like the best at everything. But it's because of my disability and just embracing it that I find that that makes life a little bit more enjoyable, but also accessible to me.
Yeah, and I think it makes it enjoyable for other people as well. I don't know. I've found the more I've embraced my disability, I find that too. The more I've embraced it, the more I've leaned into that. And I mean, there are definitely like things that are not fun. Like, if I drop something on the ground, like that's a real pain in the ass. I get frustrated. Like, but I don't know. Mostly, I mean, but that's any human experience. It's not black and white. It's not either or. It's all together, all of these things. But overall, I feel that the experience has been positive. And I I feel that way about all the other parts of myself as well.
Definitely. And I think that's a really nice way to bring this episode to kind of a close. As we've been talking, I know that some of it might trigger some of our listeners or people that might be engaging with this episode. So if you do feel like you need to seek help or want to talk about things that are affecting you in life right now, there are going to be some information to support services both in the UK and in America, which will be in the show notes along with the transcript of this episode. Thank you from myself.
Yes, thank you so much for everybody who listened. And we hope you tune in to our next episode.